You're standing on that lot right now, keys in your hand, the paint shining, the salesman smiling, and the payment book feels like it'll never end. And you're about to sign for something that's going to eat you alive. Here's the truth. Nobody on that lot will tell you. Some of the most trusted trucks and SUVs in America right now are ticking time bombs, and I've watched them roll into my bay with the same broken parts over and over until I could set my watch by them. I've been turning wrenches for the better part of 30 years, and the vehicles people brag about are often the exact ones that empty their wallets by 120,000 miles. I still remember the guy who towed in a nearly new pickup, barely 3 years old, because the engine swallowed its own timing chain. He paid $7,000 for a rebuild on a truck he was still making payments on. That memory's why I'm talking to you tonight. Stick with me, because at the end I'm going to give you the one engine family that a major long-term dependability study quietly flagged for failures years before the public caught on, and it's still being sold today. Whether you're buying brand new, shopping used, or you already own one of these and your stomach just dropped, this is for you. Every single thing I tell you comes from what I've personally seen bleak, knock, and die on my lift. Let me start with the one that hurts people the most, because they never see it coming. There's a certain kind of buyer who wants a big, comfortable, do-everything SUV, and the marketing tells them a turbocharged V6 is the smart, modern choice. More power, better mileage, best of both worlds. That's the pitch. And I want you to understand something before you fall for it. I'm talking about the Ford EcoBoost engines, specifically the 3.5-liter first generation that ran from about 2011 through 2016 in the F-150 and the Expedition and a handful of others. On paper, it's a monster. In my bay, it was a repeat customer. The problem was the timing chain and the water pump, but the water pump is the one that made grown men want to cry. On that engine, the water pump is internal. It's driven off the timing system, and it sits behind the timing cover. So when it fails, and it does fail, coolant doesn't just drip on your driveway where you'd catch it early. It weeps inside the engine, and it can wash right into your oil. I've pulled dipsticks on those trucks and seen that milky, coffee with too much cream mess that tells me the coolant and oil have already met. By then, the bearings are living on borrowed time. Now, here's the part that separates my shop from that smiling salesman. Replacing that internal water pump isn't a $50 part in an afternoon. It's a labor nightmare because we have to go in through the front of the engine, pull the timing cover, and basically disassemble the front of that motor. I've written those tickets. $2,000 was a good day. $2,500 to $3,000 was more common once we found the chain guides were worn too. And if that coolant already trashed the bearings, now you're staring at a long block, and that's $8,000 on a truck you thought was bulletproof. The buyers never heard a word about it. Why would they? The window sticker doesn't mention the water pump's hiding spot. The salesman's never been under one, but the owner forums, the truck platforms, they've been screaming about this for years. Guys posting at 110,000 miles, 130,000 miles, watching the temperature gauge climb on a highway on-ramp with a trailer behind them. So here's what you do. If you're looking at one of these first-generation 3.5 EcoBoost trucks, you pull that oil cap and that dipstick before you ever talk price. You're looking for any hint of that milky sludge. You check the overflow tank for oil sheen floating on the coolant, and you ask flat out whether that internal water pump has ever been done, and you want a receipt. No receipt, no proof. You assume it's coming, and you knock the cost of that repair right off what you're willing to pay, or you walk. Now, here's what should make the hair on your neck stand up. That water pump problem is bad, but at least it gives you a warning if you know where to look. The next trap I'm going to show you gives you almost nothing until the whole thing lets go on the highway. And it's on a vehicle even more people trust with their families. Think about who buys a midsize SUV or a minivan. Families, people hauling kids, groceries, dogs, everything. They want safe and dependable, and they'll pay for a name they trust. So let's talk about a transmission that turned that trust into a betrayal. I'm talking about the Nissan and the CVT problem The continuously variable transmission that Nissan put in, everything from the Altima to the Rogue to the Pathfinder and the Murano, through a long stretch of the 2013s to the 2018s, and honestly, with Echos before and after that. A CVT doesn't shift gears like a normal automatic. It uses a belt and a set of pulleys to slide through ratios. When it works, it's smooth. When it fails, and on these, it fails a lot, it shudders, it whines, it overheats, and it slips like you're driving on ice. I had folks come in describing it perfectly without knowing what it was. They'd say it feels like the car is hesitating or surging, or there's a vibration at 40 to 50 miles an hour like driving over rumble strips. That's the CVT starting to cook itself. And the killer is the repair. These transmissions are largely not something you rebuild cheaply on a corner. A replacement CVT on one of these with parts and labor runs $3,500 to over $5,000. On a car that might only be worth $6,000 or $7,000 at that point, you read that right. The repair cost almost as much as the whole vehicle. I watched a woman make that exact calculation in my waiting room. Single mom, Altima, she bought used, thought she got a deal. Transmission let go at 90-something thousand miles. When I told her the number, she just went quiet because she still owed money on it. And now she had to choose between fixing it or walking away from a car she was still paying for. That's the moment that sticks with you as a mechanic. That's the moment nobody on the sales floor ever has to witness. The dependability surveys caught this. The complaint databases are stuffed with these transmissions. And here's the insider piece the buyer never hears. There were extended warranty adjustments on some of these CVTs because the failure rate was so high, but that coverage runs out, and once it's gone, you're on your own with a $5,000 repair on a family hauler. So what do? If you're shopping any Nissan with a CVT from that era, you take it on a real test drive, not around the block. Get it up to that 40 to 50 mile an hour range and hold it there. Feel for shudder. Feel for that rubber band surging where the engine revs, but the car doesn't quite go. Get the fluid checked. That CVT fluid should be clean, not burnt and dark, not smelling scorched. And know that a lot of people simply skip these entirely and buy a Toyota or a Honda with a conventional automatic instead, and they sleep better for it. But here's where it gets worse, and here's where I start to get angry on your behalf. Because a bad water pump, a bad transmission, those are engineering misses. What I'm about to tell you next is about who knew and when they knew it and why they let you drive off the lot anyway. Let me tell you what really happens behind the curtain, because you've earned it by sticking with me this far. When a certain component fails again and again, the manufacturer knows. They know long before you do. They collect warranty claim data from every dealership in the country. They can see the exact mileage a part tends to die at, down to a tight range, because thousands of the same repair are getting billed back to them. And there's a document that lives in that world called a technical service bulletin. It's basically the manufacturer quietly telling their own dealership mechanics, hey, when this part fails on this engine, here's the fix, which means they've documented the failure in writing internally. But that bulletin doesn't go to you. It's not on the window sticker. It's not in the glossy brochure. The salesman closing your deal has probably never read one in his life. So the machine that profits from selling you the vehicle knows about the weak point, and the machine that profits from repairing it knows about the weak point, and the only person standing in the dark holding the keys in the loan is you. That's the part that took me years to fully stomach. I used to think it was just bad luck, certain models breaking. Then I started reading these bulletins for the repairs I was already doing, and I realized the pattern was known. The failure had a part number, a labor time, a documented procedure. It wasn't a surprise to anyone except the person paying for it, and I know exactly what that feels like because it happened to me. Years back, before I knew what I know now, I bought a used SUV because the brand had a reputation and the price felt right. Within a year, I was into it for a head gasket and a cooling system that I later found out was a known weak spot on that exact engine. I'd been on the other side of the counter. I got sold the reputation, not the reality. That's the day I promised myself that if I ever got the chance to warn people first, I'd take it. Picture yourself back on that lot this weekend, keys in your hand, staring at a truck you can't see inside of, hoping the salesman's smile is telling the truth. That hope is exactly what I want to take off your shoulders for good. Everything I've learned reading those hidden bulletins and pulling those dipsticks is written down in the Complete Lemon Proof Bundle, a set of digital guides you can download and keep. It hands you the reliability matrix that separates the hype from the hard repair data, a list of the exact engines and transmissions to avoid by model year and family, and a 6-point go or no-go checklist built just for truck buyers. It teaches you to read the same NHTS, a complaint records and technical service bulletins a safety engineer reads, so you spot a systemic failure early before it costs you a dime. And here's a check you can run tonight for free, right at your own kitchen table. Pull up the government complaint database, type in any vehicle I named earlier, and watch how the same failure shows up hundreds of times at the same mileage. That's the paper trail the salesman prays you never find. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And since your next car purchase is coming, whether you're ready or not, the smart move is to walk onto that lot already, knowing where the bodies are buried. Now, let me pull back the curtain even further, because I want to show you what really happens behind it. So let's keep going, because now I want to talk about the engine that fooled the most people who thought they were being smart. There's a whole class of buyer who does their homework, or thinks they do. They buy a domestic V8 truck because it's simple, proven American iron. And a lot of the time they're right. But there's a specific stretch of General Motors V8S, the 5.3 liter with the active fuel management system, roughly the 2014 through 2019 range in the Silverado, the Sierra, the Tahoe, the Suburban, that developed a reputation in my bay for one ugly word: oil consumption. Active fuel management, and later dynamic fuel management, was designed to save gas by shutting down cylinders when you don't need them. Sounds smart, but on a chunk of these engines, that system combined with certain lifters and rings meant the engine started drinking oil, not leaking it on your driveway, burning it internally, quietly, so the owner had no idea until the light came on or the engine started knocking because it ran low between oil changes. I had guys swear up and down they never saw a drop under the truck, and they were right. There was no leak. The oil was going out the tailpipe a little at a time, and the lifters on these, the AFM lifters, they had a habit of collapsing, and when one goes, it can take out the camshaft. Now, you're not talking about a quart of oil. You're talking a lifter and cam job that runs $2,500 to $4,000, depending on how much damage got done and whether they replace all the lifters or just the failed ones, which any honest shop tells you to do all of them or you'll be back. Here's the takeaway that can save you thousands. If you own one of these trucks right now, this next part is for you specifically. So lean in. You do not wait for the light. You check your oil level yourself by hand every couple of weeks. Pull that dipstick when the engine's been off and cool, sitting on level ground, and you learn what full looks like on your truck. Then you watch it. If you're a quart low, 1,000 miles after an oil change, and there's nothing on the ground, you've got consumption, and you need to know that before it starves the lifter. Some owners started running a slightly heavier oil within spec and doing shorter oil change intervals to buy time, and it helped. Some disabled the cylinder deactivation with a device to take the strain off the system, though that's a bigger conversation. The point is, checking your own oil, a thing that costs you nothing and takes 2 minutes, is the single best early warning you have against a $4,000 surprise. And if you're shopping one used, you do the same thing before you buy. Check the oil, look at the level, look at the color, ask for oil change records, and look at how often they changed it, because the guy who changed it every 10,000 miles on the dot and ignored consumption did that engine no favors. Listen for a tick at cold start. A collapsing lifter often talks to you first thing in the morning. Now, I told you these problems were known, but I haven't told you the worst part of the game yet, because so far everything I've described you can at least catch if you know where to look. The next thing is designed so you can't. Let's talk about turbochargers and small engines because this is where the industry made you a promise it couldn't keep. For years now, the pitch has been downsizing. Take a big engine out, put a small turbocharged engine in, and you get the power of the big one with the fuel economy of the small one. It's on window stickers everywhere. Little turbo 4 doing the work a V6 used to do. And I want to be fair, some of these are fine, but a lot of them asked a tiny engine to work like a big one for 100,000 miles, and physics doesn't care about marketing. I've seen turbo 4s across several brands come in with carbon buildup, choking the intake valves, because a lot of these are direct injection, meaning the fuel sprays straight into the cylinder and never washes over the back of the intake valves like it used to. So carbon just cakes up back there. The engine starts running rough, misfiring, losing power, and the fix is a job called walnut blasting, where we literally blast the carbon off the valves with crushed walnut shells. That's $400 to $800, and on some engines it comes back around again. Then there's the turbo itself. A turbocharger spins at unbelievable speeds and runs blistering hot, and it lives and dies by clean oil. Skip oil changes or run an engine that's already burning oil, and that turbo's bearings suffer. When a turbo fails, you might see blue smoke, you might hear a whine or a rattle, and the replacement runs anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 or more once you count labor and the parts around it. Here's the insider truth. These small turbo engines are often lovely for the first owner during the warranty years. The pain lands on the second owner, the used buyer, the person trying to be smart with their money by buying a 3 or 4 year old vehicle. That's you, potentially. The design shifts the cost down the road to whoever's holding it at 100,000 miles. And that's exactly the person the fancy fuel economy number was supposed to be helping. So if you're looking at a small turbocharged engine, especially direct injected, you factor in that this engine wants meticulous maintenance, and it will not forgive neglect the way an old naturally aspirated engine did. You ask for every oil change record. You favor the ones with a documented history of frequent oil changes with the right oil, and you understand that the fuel you save at the pump can get erased in a single turbo or carbon job. But now I want to turn all of this around, because I've spent all this time telling you what breaks, and you clicked on this because you want to know what to actually buy. So let me get to the reason I told you to stick around. Here's the thing. The survey's buried in their own data, the thing that never makes the flashy headline. There is a long-running set of dependability studies in this industry that tracks problems per vehicle over years of ownership, and there's data that follows vehicles out past the 10 and 15-year mark, the stuff that actually matters if you plan to keep a vehicle instead of trading it every 3 years. And buried in all of that is a pattern that the marketing departments will never put on a billboard, because it points you toward the plainest, least exciting, least profitable vehicles on the road. The vehicles that quietly cross 200,000 and 300,000 miles in my experience, and that the long-term data backs up, are overwhelmingly the naturally aspirated, port-injected, conventional automatic, boring as dishwater ones. I'm talking about the Toyota engines like the older 4.0 V6, the 1GR that lived in the 4Runner and the Tacoma, and the 2.7 and later engines that just refused to die. I'm talking about the Toyota 5.7 liter V8, the 3UR in the Tundra and the Sequoia, an engine I've seen roll past 250,000 miles, still running strong, still not burning oil, because it wasn't asked to do anything clever. It just makes power the old-fashioned way and keeps going. And here's the part that feels like buried treasure. Everybody chases the newest, the most powerful, the most turbocharged, the most computerized. But if you go find a Lexus or a Toyota from that era with the naturally aspirated V8 and the traditional automatic transmission, you are buying one of the most durable powertrains ever mass-produced. And because it's not flashy, you can often buy it for less than the trendy turbo truck sitting next to it, the GX460, the older Sequoia, the Tundra with that 5.7. These are the ones I tell my own family to look for. Not because someone paid me to say it. Nobody pays me. But because I've had my hands inside these engines at high mileage and seen how little wears out. The secret isn't a magic model. The secret is a formula. Naturally aspirated, not turbocharged, port injection, or at least an engine known to handle carbon well, not a fragile direct injection setup with no history, a conventional automatic transmission with real gears, not a CVT, and not one of the troubled early dual clutch units, and a manufacturer with a track record of these engines going the distance. You match that formula and you sidestep almost every expensive trap I've described tonight in one move. That's the thing they don't want front and center, because there's no fat profit in selling you a simple, durable powertrain that you keep for 20 years and never finance again. The money is in the churn. The money's in the trade-in every 3 years, the complex engine that needs the dealership, the extended warranty that expires right before the expensive part fails. The honest math points you toward the boring, reliable, keep it forever vehicle, and the whole machine is built to point you somewhere else. Now, let me come back to you if you already own one of the vehicles I've named tonight, because I don't want you to feel doomed. You're not. If you've got that first generation EcoBoost, start checking your coolant and oil for that milky mixing right now, monthly, and get ahead of that water pump before it takes the bearings with it. If you've got the Nissan CVT, keep that fluid fresh and cool, avoid towing and hard runs in the heat, and get the fluid serviced by someone who knows those transmissions, because heat is what kills them and clean fluid buys you miles. If you've got that 5.3 with active fuel management, check your oil by hand every couple weeks. Like I said, catch the consumption early and never let it run low. And if you've got a little direct injected turbo, change that oil more often than the manual's longest interval tells you. Use the right oil and consider getting those intake valves cleaned before they choke. None of that costs much. Most of it costs nothing but a few minutes and your attention. The people who profit from your breakdown are counting on you not knowing to do these things. Now you know. That's the whole point of me sitting here. Let me tell you one more thing I've learned watching thousands of these vehicles come and go, because it ties everything together. The single biggest predictor of whether a vehicle makes it to 200,000 miles isn't just the badge on the hood. It's whether the design gave the owner a fighting chance to maintain it and whether that owner took it. The durable engines I love are also the forgiving ones. They tell you when something's wrong before it's fatal. They don't hide the water pump behind the timing cover. They don't burn oil silently until a lifter dies. They don't cook a transmission you can't afford to replace. They give you a warning and they give you a cheap fix if you listen. The vehicles I warn people away from all share the opposite trait. They fail quietly, expensively, and by design in a spot where you can't catch it cheap. That's not bad luck. That's a choice someone made in an engineering meeting, weighing warranty cost against fuel economy numbers and marketing appeal. And the person who lost that meeting was you, the owner, who wasn't in the room. So when you walk that lot this weekend, I want you to see through the shine. I want you to pull the dipstick before you talk price. I want you to ask about the internal water pump, the CVT fluid history, the oil consumption, the timing chain by name, and watch the salesman's face when he realizes you know more than he does. I want you to favor the boring, proven, naturally aspirated, conventional transmission vehicle, even when the flashy turbo one has more toys. Because in 5 years, when your neighbor is financing a transmission that costs more than his car's worth, you'll be driving a paid-off truck that just keeps starting. Here's what I really want you to feel as you leave here tonight. You almost signed for something that would have owned you. And instead, you're going to be the one person on that lot who can't be fooled, because you know where the bodies are buried and you know the 2-minute checks that reveal them. You're the kind of driver who refuses to be somebody's easy mark. You want the truth, not the pitch. And now you've got the truth straight from the guy who's had his hands inside these engines when they let go. You already know what to do the next time a salesman smiles too wide. So tell me something in the comments, because I read them and I answer what I can. What are you driving right now, and what's the mileage on it? If it's one of the ones I named tonight, the EcoBoost, the Nissan CVT, the 5.3 with active fuel management, tell me if you felt any of the warning signs I described, that shudder at 45 miles an hour, that quart of oil gone with no leak. And tell me where you're watching from, what town, what state, because I like knowing who I'm actually talking to out there. If you've already dodged one of these bullets, say so, because your story might be the thing that saves the next person reading. If you're the kind of person who refuses to get burned, who wants to keep hearing the truth, the dealerships bury, then come along with me, because this is a whole community of drivers who look out for each other instead of getting fleeced one at a time. Everything I share is aimed at keeping your money in your pocket and your vehicle on the road longer than anyone told you it could go. And next time, I'm going to name the 3 used SUVs under $15,000 that I'd buy for my own kid without a second thought, and the one that looks like a bargain but hides a $10,000 engine failure that almost nobody sees coming until the day it strands them. You do not want to be holding the keys to that one before you hear what I've got to say. So stick with me, keep checking that oil by hand, and I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, one last thing. Tonight I gave you the overview, but inside the Garage Bench Club, I walk you through the full engine-by-engine buyer's blacklist. And if you've got a truck in mind, you can ask me directly, and I answer you myself. Not some machine. You won't be doing this alone. So many buyers are already in there with me. Just point your phone at the code on screen. Cancel anytime. Now that you know what mechanics are really seeing, let me help you before you spend a dime. Right here, I'll walk you through 7 engines to steer clear of so you don't buy a costly mistake. It starts next.